ion pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.
Going into then, we could talk a little bit about new Trek.
Let's get into it.
As a Kurtzman shill, you love all of it.
I do. I inject it right into my veins.
I mean, not so much.
But I do think that, so I think Kurtzman came in for Discovery season 1, and he had to work with what was there. I don't think he had a full of slate, be able to develop it the way he would given his complete freedom. But I think that there were 3 mistakes made for that first season of Discovery. The first was the decision to make it so aesthetically different than Star Trek before. Now, I think they were doing that like Roddenberry did with TNG, because when Roddenberry started TNG, he was like, it is going to look completely different from the Star Trek of before. We wanted to, it's going to be its own thing. It's going to be distinct. And that worked for 80 years later, but for 10 years or however many years before TOS, even though they're like, it's a cutting edge, bleeding edge science vessel, people just kind of weren't buying it. And then the nacelles and just the aesthetics, I think that set things off kilter. I think the second problem was, the second problem, and I think the larger problem with Star Trek in general, is that they are doing what Star Trek has always done, making new types of making these new shows that have Star Trek elements, but also try to push the boundaries, expand, change things, which brings in new fans. That's why, your Voyager people don't love DS9 as much as your DS9 people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But because they lock them all behind Paramount Plus, because they're all behind this paywall, people aren't going to discover Star Trek like they have before. I mean, the reason there's a new generation of DS9, Enterprise, Voyager, TNG fans is because they were on Netflix and Amazon Prime for so long. People found them and were like, oh my goodness, these shows are great. So in trying to trying to push the boundaries, but making it so that only the people who are actively going to seek out Star Trek, I think they sort of misjudged the way Star Trek fans react to every new Star Trek that has ever been since the original series.
Well, I mean, one of my can remember canon as well, which is another issue. It's like we're nerds, so
Well, my favorite, one of my favorite stories is that in the 1972 or 3, people picketed NBC. We want more Star Trek. We want more Star Trek. And NBC was like, all right, we'll do an animated series. And that news broke. And they were like, kill the animated series. Don't make it a cartoon. And of course, people, to use one of my favorite slang terms, slagged off the animated series. But now people go back and they're like, oh my goodness, it's actually good. It's the only Star Trek to ever win an Emmy for storytelling.
I mean, I remember there was
also considered not canon.
TNG came out. Yeah, there was whole stories about people kicking off and writing in letters to Paramount or whatever it was at the time, and saying that this isn't Star Trek. How dare you reboot this series and blah blah blah. And we still get that now when any TV series is they do any sort of soft reboot, and then people will kick off. And I'm just like, okay, soft reboots, continuation soft reboots, they do work. Okay, reimaginings, other than Battlestar Galactica, maybe don't tend to work that well.
Yeah.
But this was, but I think people kick off about DS9 and then grew to love it. People kicked off about Voyager, then grew to love it. I never grew to love Discovery. I always.
How many times have you watched it?
I haven't even watched all of it.
Well, there you go. I mean, look, I did my first rewatch ahead of the season 5. And now you read in the book, I liked more about every season of Discovery than I didn't, that I covered in there.
Yeah.
I did not I would watch an episode, and then right before I would do my review, I would watch it again. And those are the only times I would see the episode. So ahead of season 5, I did my first proper Discovery rewatch. And it was so much better the second time around because, Jay, I'm telling you, Star Trek ages well. There will be things that annoyed you from season 1 that would not annoy you this time. And that gets to the third thing that I think Star Trek Discovery did wrong, that set things off, is that we should have known from the get-go, from the beginning, that Lorca was from the Mirror Universe. Because if you watch that first season, the foreshadowing of Lorca being the reason things are bad immaculate. It's so
Yeah.
clearly obvious in hindsight. But coming in as new fans, we're like, they don't understand Star Trek. This isn't how a captain acts. This isn't how a Starfleet crew acts. And and you see how the crew is trying to be, adhere to Starfleet values, but they have this psychopath captain. And like, they didn't have to tell us his plan. They didn't have to be like, oh, hey everyone, he's from the Mirrorverse and he wants to go kill the Emperor. He could have just been from the Mirrorverse and like trying to keep it secret. And we wouldn't, we could have bought the fact that like, oh, maybe he's trying to be good. That would, I think, would have worked great. If we would have thought that Lorca was trying to be good while being bad, I think that would have changed how people saw Discovery going in, and they would have understood the tonal dissonance with other Star Trek. Because you compare it to even, maybe even Picard season 1 and 2, which also is kind of darker in its tone. Discovery season 1 is unique in that sort of tonal dissonance.
My problems with it were everything to do with the Klingons, the ships, the style. The way
that was a choice.
Culture. It was awful. I really found it. I didn't even find it. I found it creepy. So I really struggled with it. My main problem with Discovery, though, was always I didn't love the casting. I talked about this in a video I dropped yesterday. Basically, the difference between Discovery and Strange New Worlds isn't the storytelling, the writing, anything like that, because I actually think it's similar in both. The casting for Strange New Worlds is perfect. The casting for Discovery, I didn't like. And my point was, in Strange New Worlds, I care about these characters. I'm rooting for them. In Discovery, couldn't care less. And it's not that they're bad actors, because they're not. And Michael Burnham, I forget her name, was
Sneakwa Martin Green.
Yeah, so she's a great actress. I think she's a lovely actress. The guy that plays Saru, I feel
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones, thank you. He is an actor that I feel most sorry for in life. I keep watching movies now, and I see him as like going years. He's like in the background or thing, and he's always been known as a bit of an actor's actor. That he's well and very popular, but most things he's in very heavy prosthetics, and then he's in. I was watching What We Do in the Shadows, and I was like, "It's Doug."
Yeah. It's so funny too, because I'm with you on the Klingons. I think the Klingons, that was and the other thing that breaks my heart is that they were like so serious about making the Klingon language accurate, like that they got the Klingon right. But those outfits they had him in, as I wrote in the book, kind of sounds like actors are in heavy prosthetic makeup with big fake teeth trying to speak this pretend language. Like, it didn't serve them. And if you listen to Mary Chieffo, who played L'Rell, talk about that experience, those suits were miserable. Like, they couldn't even sit down. They had to be like propped up on boards in between takes. And like
heavy.
And if people loved it, maybe it'd be worth it. I don't know, but people hated it, and I feel so bad for them. And then you look at the Klingons in Strange New Worlds, and you're like, there you go. Like, the Klingon redesign happened. I don't remember what the reaction was to the redesign in the motion picture, and then later in Search for Spock. I was too young to know about that. But I have to imagine that eventually people just accepted it. And again, I think that's what they were trying to do. Like, they, Roddenberry and them had more money, better prosthetics. And I think that's what the goal was here. But they just, it just went too far. But then you look at Saru, I swear to God, the close-ups of that prosthetic mask, that's a real guy. Like, that's not Doug Jones. That's a real alien.
Yeah. No, I do. That's the only character in there that I really liked.
But I do think the Strange New Worlds cast too, just to build on your point, that this was sort of where I was headed with that. Sorry, is that I feel like Discovery was never more Star Trek in like how it felt, than season 2. Like, because something about season 2 felt like the perfect blend of what Discovery was trying to be and what Star Trek was, and I think it's largely because Anson Mount, pitch perfect Captain Pike, Ethan Peck nailed Spock. And Rebecca Romaine is an excellent number 1. I mean, I was completely on board with all of it.
They could have made a woman to be number 1, and it would be perfect. She's,
Yes.
I mean, they cast that brilliantly. I think the thing is that with me is just that they cast Strange New Worlds beautifully. And season 2 was, I agree with you, that's the one series I watched. So I watched all the first season, I watched all the second season. They lost me halfway through the third season. And then when they obviously shot into the future, I came back and I had to watch. I did actually think I did watch the second half of the third season just to understand what was going on. And I like bits of that. I like the Borg type thing, which I've forgotten the name of now. I thought that was going to lead into the Borg, and it just didn't. But then into the future, and they did the burn, and I checked out again. I was just like, oh, God's sake. I was looking forward to seeing new ships and new things. And then, so obviously we went into like the 4th season. Is that right? 4th or 5th season?
Yeah. 4th
when
season.
Did they reach Starfleet Academy sort of thing? Sorry.
Well, they got to Starfleet in the middle of season 3.
Well, so that's why I sort of went back into it again.
Yeah. And then I will say, look, I in the book, you'll see that like I quite love season 3 because I felt that season 3 was 100% them saying, okay, you think we're not about Starfleet Federation values? The Discovery is going to be the lone example of the true believers of Starfleet. And like that bit with the guy in the season 3 premiere, like he's alone on this station and every day he puts up the, like Federation flag.
Yeah.
Oh, right in the heart is where it got me. And then when he meets Michael Burnham, like, oh, I love it.
Yeah. And he has a massive.
Then we get to the end, and there's a sad Kelpian on a planet made of dilithium, and I was like, oh, guys. I mean, now again, for me, I am fine with a Star Trek that has a dopey, especially a dopey technobabble kind of problem and solution. That is that also is
my
very
Star Trek. Tachyon Pulse podcast for
yes, our Tachyon Pulse is failed to penetrate. But yeah, so like again, did I love it? No. Was it a good ending? You know, was it? I think they could have gotten there better, but I loved the spirit of that season. The idea that it was about bringing the Federation back together. Season 4, I do think the dark matter anomaly was a little much when you're destroying whole planets in Star Trek.
I tell you what, I didn't watch all of season 4.
That's
the one I didn't watch.
Yeah, that's like when books I mean, I'll be honest, I even watching it on the rewatch, seeing Quajon get destroyed, I was like, oh, that was a bad choice. Like, I mean, it should I think it should have been like tertiary, like where the planet was in trouble. Like we didn't need a full Death Star moment. And I get rising stakes, all that. But I loved that one. Didn't like the beginning. Loved the ending because what a Star Trek ending. They didn't attack, like they went and were like, we are going to do first contact, be diplomacy. Like that is a Star Trek ending, you know? Yeah. They destroyed a whole planet.
I did watch it. I'm sure when I started watching the 5th season, I must have watched it, but I can't actually remember. But I've famously said over and over again, I really like the 5th season. Other than the end.
What a romp.
Awful. But the last episode,
what was awful? What was awful?
I didn't like the end. I thought it went off the cliff like a lemon at the end.
Wait, do you mean the thing with the progenitors thing, or do you mean the like?
No, just the final episode, the way we saw it old, and then it linked into the short.
Yeah, I mean,
and stuff. I just thought it was bad.
That was the weakest part of the finale for me. I would have preferred them to just leave it more second star to the right, straight on till morning. That's a way you end a Star Trek. Because then you can always come back.
Yeah, but I actually thought the 5th season was interesting. I thought it was well done. But I mean, you cannot argue that Discovery was badly made because it wasn't, and it was well written and everything. It was just I didn't care about the characters except for Empress Georgia, who I adored, and every episode she was in, I adored. The bit where she's doing the blinking to confuse the AI. I just freaking love that.
Well, can we talk about how in that episode I'm like, is that David Cronenberg in Star Trek? Is he just David Cronenberg shows up in Star Trek, just doesn't leave? I love that. Like, where else do you get that?
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.